Who was vilified in their time, but in hindsight, was completely right. Lindy Chamberlain, a dingo, killed my baby lady. She was vilified, mocked and ridiculed across the world. She then spent 3 years in prison, before it turned out she was actually telling the truth the whole time, and a dingo did, in fact, kill her baby. Joseph Lister, one of the first doctors to publicly endorse germ theory and recommend disinfection. At the time, surgeons would literally move from an amputation to an autopsy to the delivery room using the same tools, often without even cleaning the gore from their hands and clothes. When Lister recommended comprehensive disinfection between procedures, nearly the whole British medical community laughed at him. He spent years as a pariah gathering data from his own practice until he could finally prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that his methods reduced post-op infection by a staggering rate. Now he's known as the father of modern surgery. Johnny Lydon, when he said on the radio that Jimmy Savile was dodgy. The guy who came up with the theory of Pangea and continental drift. Richard Jewell was blasted as being the Atlanta Olympic bomber when he was really just a guy helping people out down there. He deserved better. Stanley Prisoner. Everyone who was anyone in science knew that proteins couldn't be an infectious agent. They weren't even alive. He suffered so much mockery and skepticism until the mad cow disease and kuru, etc., were found to be precisely what he had described. Wrote an econ paper in 2007 about the housing market crashing and was told the housing market never crashes. Patricia Stallings comes to mind. Convicted of poisoning her first child, gave birth in prison, kid got taken away, and the kid also dies. Instead of poisoning, it was now found it was a genetic defect that had similar effects as poisoning with antifreeze. Alan Turing. Rose McGowan, for calling out Harvey Weinstein. That Roman that gave Jesus vinegar to drink. Many medieval Christian writers saw the offering of vinegar wine as an act of torture rather than mercy. But turns out that the Roman military gave their soldiers a water/vinegar mix to drink, so the Roman soldier shared with Jesus some of what he had to drink. Nicholas Copernicus theorized that the planets actually circled the sun instead of the other way around. The church initially accepted heliocentricity but banned his views in 1600s. John Snow. He tried to remove the handle of a water pump in London that was drawing its water downstream from a sewage pipe. People who drew water from the pump caught cholera. The half-dozen or so scientists and physicians who waged a decades-long struggle in the 1930s-70s to prove that lead exposure was bad, and dusting everything with lead by burning it in gasoline was bad. The industry opposition was unreal. I know Needleman at least had his work shut down for a few years as his university conducted a thorough investigation for scientific misconduct. Dr. John Leal, the first man to chlorinate drinking water to kill germs. Only, chlorine is a deadly poison, so he did so secretly for a couple months at first. The judge was incredulous that a man would poison the water supply from which his own son drank, but Leal said that it was the safest water in the world, and he was right. Suitably diluted, the chlorine does no notable damage to humans, worlds of hurt to bacteria. Stanislav Petrov. More people need to know his name. He literally, quite literally saved the world. Saved the world from nuclear ruin, simply because he was stubborn and refused to believe the computing error. He went against his position orders, and was consequently sacked by the USSR and lived an isolated life. Not necessarily vilified by all, but vilified by the USSR and ignored by the West. Put some respect on his name. And he didn't even win a Nobel Peace Prize, died in 2017. Recommend watching Stanislav Petrov, the man who saved the world. The Leave Britney Alone guy. Johnny Rotten, John Lydon, talking about Jimmy Savile in 1978. The BBC banned him, Leiden, at the time, I think. And we all know how that panned out. Pearl Jam Ticket Master. Those brave Germans who openly opposed Hitler in the early 30s. Sinead O'Connor. Corey Feldman. I would say the UN Chief Inspector, Hans Blix, who said in a 2003 report that the UN investigation team had found no evidence of WMD in Iraq. Completely torn apart by the American government, public, and press. And yet, no WMD were ever found in Iraq. Charles Darwin. There's a whole book on how scared he was to publish his work, because he knew he'd be hated for it. The Reluctant Mr. Darwin, by David Quammen. Richard Jewell. Monica Lewinsky. She was a 20-year-old White House intern who got taken advantage of. Then the media crucified her for it. Sinead O'Connor. Was vilified when she ripped up a picture of the Pope on SNL for child abuse and criticizing the Catholic Church. Over the following decades, we realized how devastatingly right she was about the whole thing. Stella Liebeck, the lady who sued McDonald's for hot coffee. The Duke lacrosse team. They were proven innocent, yet only one reporter apologized for writing a story about their guilt. The accused received a large amount of money for their troubles, but the coach had trouble finding work. ESPN did a 30 for 30 on the Duke lacrosse team. Edit: the 3 players who were investigated for the crime ended up filing suit against Duke University. Duke settled for an undisclosed sum, rumored to be $0 million. Then the 3 players sued the city of Durham and the police department. That lawsuit was settled after 7 years for approximately $0,000. One of the players earned a law degree and is currently a lawyer who works with the Innocence Project. One of the players graduated from Duke and went on to earn an MBA. The 3rd player graduated from Loyola. Nifong was removed from office, disbarred, and ended up serving 1 day in jail. The dancer who accused the players, Crystal Magnum, is serving a prison sentence for 2nd-degree murder. John Brown.